Welcome to the U of Digital Live podcast, where we break down major stories in marketing and advertising into easy to understand terms. We discuss interesting opinions, and we bring you, the audience, into the conversation. Enjoy. All right, welcome to U of Digital Live. I think this is our fourth episode, Myles. Very exciting.
I'm starting to blank out on how many of these we've done. I think episode 3, I was like, oh, I thought that was 2. And then we made some reference to the previous one. I was like, oh, right, there was another one in there. This is great.
Won't it be crazy when we get to like episode 100? We're like, wow, we're already losing count.
It's a lot of hot air.
Yeah, that's a lot of hot air. Okay, so I want to just start with a couple of housekeeping items. Our AI accelerator, which we talked about on our last podcast, and we've been kind of telling everybody about it, is actually sold out now, which is really exciting. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the AI accelerator is our new kind of public course on all things AI and advertising and marketing, what's going on in the space, what kind of tools are out there, the use cases, case studies, the future of AI in our industry. And so we're super excited. It got so much, support and so much excitement that it sold out pretty quickly. And so we'll see how that run goes. It's launching on June 16th. We're really excited about it. But then because of all the demand and the excitement, we're expecting to run another one in the summer, actually. And so stay tuned for more information on the upcoming kind of announcement on the second version of the AI accelerator. The other thing I want to call out is we've launched a couple of courses. These are new kinds of courses for U of Digital in partnership with some entities and companies. So the first one is in partnership with the ANA, which we're really excited about. It's about programmatic supply quality, the issues with the programmatic supply chain, what marketers and buyers can be doing to mitigate some of those issues and clean their supply chain, and then also kind of shining a light on some of the tools that the ANA has put out, including something called the Programmatic Transparency and Benchmark Report and the True KPI Framework. So look out for that. Check that out on our website. Anybody can actually take that course for free, thanks to the ANA. And then the second course we're putting out, it's actually launching like today or tomorrow, is with Live Intent and Zeta Global. So they have a really cool solution around identity resolution called Hero. And so the course is a little bit about what's going on in the identity space. Obviously there's a lot of signal loss and how different tools like Hero can help publishers, advertisers, ad tech companies kind of mitigate some of the challenges with that. That course is also free. So check that out.
That is HIRO.
Oh, thank you.
For anybody listening. Yes.
Thank you. But yeah, it's a new kind of thing for us as U of Digital. We're excited about it, where we're just partnering with different companies to educate the market, the ecosystem, their partners on kind of what's happening in their sector and their space, and then what solutions they're putting out to solve for some of those challenges. So let's get into our news roundup for the week. The first thing I want to talk about, because it's extremely exciting, is one of the articles that I think Madison and Wall puts out, newsletters or articles regularly. So Madison and Wall, founded by Brian Weiser, kind of an economist of our industry. So they're always putting out these great forecasts about what to expect. And I think up until now, their forecast for 2025 growth in advertising was 3.6% for 2024 to 2025. But then they revised the forecast up to 6%, which is close to double, which is very exciting. Everybody rejoice. The floodgates are opening up again. There will be money, and that's awesome. A couple of things I want to say about this report. So I think it makes sense because, just based on thematically what we've heard, Q2 started off pretty soft, but it's opened up. And then Q1 was obviously stronger than everyone expected. And I think that's part of the reason why they're revising their forecast. I also think the market is up and doing way better than it looked like a month ago when all the tariff stuff was hitting the market. And so all of it makes sense. The one thing I'm interested in kind of keeping an eye on is, do we kind of revise it back down once we look at Q2 earnings in Q3? Because again, like a lot of what I heard just feet on the street in Q2 was like softness. Like Q1 was strong, Q2 was soft, right? And so if we look back then at Q2 earnings, are we going to kind of then whiplash backwards? And I don't know, like just reading the actual post or the newsletter from Madison and Wall, they obviously don't have a ton of visibility yet into what Q2 will look like. I wonder if they're not necessarily taking into account what we're hearing on the street in terms of softness.
And for what it's worth, that 6% number, I think, is itself still a bit soft in relative terms relative to a strong year.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of like a series of acquisitions that have happened in the last month or so, or a couple of months. Um, and so basically, let's see. So there was acquisitions and announcements, let's say, right? So everybody's announcing AI things. And so first of all, WPP had a big announcement this past week called they're announcing a new tool they're putting out called Open Intelligence. They're calling it the first ever large marketing Myles.
What
LMM.
Yes.
LMM, which honestly, like, I don't think they use the acronym enough in the press release and in the marketing. Because if they use like that, to me is really smart marketing, right? Use LMM all day long. WPP, like, come on. But they're calling it Open Intelligence. And that is, I don't quite like a lot of agency tools that get put out. Like, I don't quite know what it is. It's like, hey, we have partnerships with all these other companies. The companies send us data. We use that data through our tool to do better creative and do better planning and better we do all the things with the tool that has trillions of data signals. So I don't quite know what it is, but it sounds cool. So that, and it's smart to obviously make an announcement that they have an AI tool. So that happened. MIQ announced a tool called Sigma, which sounds somewhat similar. And you could argue MIQ is very much an agency-like business. And so I would imagine the tools have similar kind of use cases and functionalities. So if somebody from MIQ hears this and is mad at me about saying it like that, please reach out. And then Salesforce spent $8 billion on acquiring a company called Informatica, which I think is meant to kind of power their AI tools. And then Snowflake acquired a company called Crunchy Data for $250 million. And there was a couple other smaller acquisitions. But yeah, Myles, what do we make of all these new AI tools and AI acquisitions?
So with the WPP announcement and MIQ's announcement, they both use the word trillions in their announcements. So
with a T.
You're a long time ad tech guy. What were the numbers at when you started? Were they in the billions yet? Were you supposed to classify things as being billions?
Yeah, so when I worked I remember back in like 07, 08, when I was working at ad.com, we sold this thing called the billion block, right? And so get this, the billion block was 1 billion ad impressions in one day.
1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, Myles just did the
Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil. Yeah. 1 billion. So the billion block was basically, hey, T-Mobile, you're launching a new phone. Why don't you just flood the internet with 1 billion impressions? And we charged $1 million for it, actually. $1 million for 1 billion impressions. So it was like it was like $1 CPM, I think. And it's a little gimmick.
It was literally an ad bundle of 1 billion impressions. That was the IO. It's just
CIO. Yeah, it was like $1 CPM. We will run 1 billion impressions in a day across the web.
Wow. I mean, I guess good thing they didn't have the ANA transparency report back. Starts where those billion impressions were from.
So when we used to run those billion blocks, it was just like that day was so intense in the office. And like everyone was like by the hour looking at the billion block. Like, is it delivering? What kind of sites is it running on? Like, it was fun times. Anyways, I digress. That was billions. Now we're in trillions.
Thank you. Because I think that just contextualizes like part of what these announcements represent is this industry is in a never ending arms race. And one of the forms that arms race takes is just sheer numbers and who can go to market with the most zeros behind their number. And both of those announcements describe the solutions as sourcing trillions, hundreds of trillions, I think. I think WPP maybe only said the word trillions, but then I want to say that MIQ said 700 trillion, which is a crazy high. It's like an insane number. And so anyway, I because when I started thinking about it through the lens of like, okay, trillions, we're up to hundreds of trillions now. Actually, it's not even trillions, hundreds of trillions. It's a lot of zeros. I'm not going to bother counting them in my head. Um, and it's the continuation of the story arc of like how much I would imagine a lot of the data sources. In fact, most of the data, the vast majority of it is third party sourced. So it's sourced from partners or from, data providers, and you bring enough of it together. And instead of pushing it through machine learning, which would have been the whatever 5 years ago state of the art, now you push it through an LLM. Like that's just now the thing that you use to process the data and extract value from it has changed dramatically in the last couple of years. And that new thing, the LLM, requires exponentially more data to be effective. Like you can make machine learning effective with whatever, probably a couple hundred, couple thousand good data points. LLMs, you have to feed it practically internet scale data to like get it to really be smart. And so that was just my takeaway on it. It wasn't so much kind of like what can it do, what can't it do. I was just like, okay, the stakes have clearly been raised. This is how many zeros are table stakes now. I would imagine you expect other companies to make similar kind of announcements, and everything's now going to be at the trillions range. And it feeds into LLMs, not machine learning.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't. I did not think of um, data points in the context of feeding machine learning versus feeding LLMs and feeding AI, and how much more data AI eats up. Like all the things we talk about with all the GPUs and the computing power that AI needs, it's because it's kind of what you're saying. I have a really stupid question, Miles. I don't know if you can answer it. What comes after a trillion?
I was just thinking the same thing as I was talking, and I don't know.
Don't know. I feel stupid. Like, what's that? Like,
I,
what are we going to be talking about in 10 years in digital advertising?
I don't know. Yeah, what is the next? Well, you really need to add 2, 3 more zeros before you get to that next thing. But so, yeah, well, but we're only 1 zero away because then what you said 700 trillion. You were only one comma 10 from adding another comma.
The next good marketing stunt in digital advertising will be the company that puts out that number as feeding its AI thing. It's like, forget trillions.
Yeah,
Santa. We gotta Google this or something live on the pod. Like, I'm embarrassed. We gotta know this. It's right around the corner, Miles. Okay, last thing in the news roundup, and this is not really news or anything. It's just, we're a training company, so we like to drop little nuggets of information and helpful tips. Can is right around the corner. So everyone's kind of making their way to the French Riviera soon ish, mid June. There's going to be a lot of, rose and yachts and parties and discussion about AI. But I want to make sure everybody knows, I've heard this a few times in the last month. It is not con. It is camp. Just trying to help you.
I just think it's so funny that, like, not to sound whatever, like a snob. I have never been to the industry event. I have been to Cannes on vacation many, many years ago. But, and so I guess I've known that it's pronounced can for a while. And it's just so funny that that event happens every year in this industry. And yet it doesn't sink in.
Yeah, and it's not like one of those things that's like, oh, well, some people say it like this and other people say it like that. No, there's like a right way to say it. It is can. It is not Genghis Khan. It is a can of beans. So just,
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Shiv, I looked it up. It's a
yeah.
quadrillion. It's a quadrillion.
Quadrillion. Thank you.
Yeah.
There you go, another learning opportunity for us and for the audience. All right. Let's get into the top story section. So, this has been brewing for like a month now. I think Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, went on some podcast or some show or something like a month ago and said, we're going to automate everything. And there was a lot of articles that followed that. Agency people were mad. Tech people were mad. whatever. And then Zuck said it again. I think he kind of doubled down last week, and he basically said something very specific. He said by the end of 2026, our goal is that you're going to be able to use Meta AI and be able to put in like a product image and a budget and leave the rest to Meta AI to drive outcomes for, whether that's you're trying to drive a sale, trying to get somebody to sign up for something, etc. Right. So I think, like, first of all, this makes a lot of sense, right? It makes tons of sense. It's obviously, like, we want AI to make things easier. We want AI to automate things that machines should be able to do better than humans, which is a lot of like campaign setup and planning and hitting buttons and operations. And so that's kind of what he's telling everybody, right? Is like, we're working on that problem and we're going to do it. Now, also, it's important to know, like, Meta, in saying this and doing this, is not unique, right? Everybody is doing this. Google is doing this, right? With a lot of the things that they announced at Google Marketing Live a few weeks ago. Even companies like the Trade Desk and, ad tech companies are trying to do this. And so everyone is doing this. He just came out and said it. And, I think, again, it's smart. It's where the industry is headed. It is a no-brainer to work in this direction, generally speaking. What I found to be really silly about the reaction was just like people being up in arms. I'm actually going to share my screen really quickly. So I saw this article in Digiday, um, and I was just at a loss, right? I saw this headline. It said Zuckerberg has made it clear his first loyalty is to shareholders. Confessions of a media agency executive. And I'm like, yeah, of course, his shareholders. It is literally his job to be loyal to shareholders. He gets paid to drive shareholder value. So why would he be loyal to some random agency executive, like, versus shareholders? That makes no sense. And second of all, like, no one, like, again, why is anyone's job to preserve somebody else's business model or agency business model? I found the headline to be just ludicrous and the quote to be ludicrous. Like, are you really up in arms about the guy doing his job and seemingly trying to do it well? Like, I don't get it.
And maybe it got a lot of page views, shit.
I mean, probably.
You know,
That's yeah, probably. Probably. Anyways, so listen, I think this is generally good. Like I said, it's going to raise the bar for advertising, right? Because if people aren't spending so much time on rote work, they're spending more time on creativity. They're spending more time on actual, like, marketing strategy. And I think those are positive things. They raise the bar. But then I think there's some risk associated with everybody moving towards like these fully kind of AI automated models to do all the things, right? Planning, strategy, planning, execution, measurement. And there's a lot of risks to talk about in terms of like grading your own homework, black box, like blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, if all of those things are addressed and done well, the other big risk that kind of underlies all of this is marketing becoming more homogenous. So, like, I think the value of marketing is in the dynamic aspect of marketing, right? Like, this marketer is doing comedy while that marketer is doing drama and that marketer is doing, something else. And that's what makes certain marketing strategies pop. And that's what gets people leaned in and interested and want to buy your product, right? But if we're putting everything through the AI tool, is it able to capture that kind of need of things being dynamic and interesting? And maybe it is. Maybe the answer is just like, well, the AI knows that, Shiv, and the AI will handle that and make things dynamic. But I worry that those are the things that we lose. And, Myles, I think you articulated this really well. Like, we're always in a cycle in the industry, right? So it's like everybody closes, XYZ marketing gap, but then, we have a new problem because everything becomes homogenous in a certain way. And then we have to do things in a new creative way. And then there's a new gap. And then, it's just a pendulum that goes back and forth. And so, I think that's a really interesting premise to kind of think about and discuss. And, open to any other thoughts and ideas from you, Myles, or from the audience. Like, what kind of box of pros and cons and potential pitfalls does us moving towards these AI tools open up as in?
something occurred to me as you were talking about what Zuckerberg said in this interview, and hopefully you and I aren't like whatever misquoting him or whatever, but you said, you can upload like a product image and, plug in a credit card and Meta will do the rest, which I think that whatever Meta and Google and I would presume Amazon will like follow with a bunch of these announcements of its own at some point. I it strikes me that, like, these platforms are, like, seem to be relatively capable of that, like LLM, they're smart enough to kind of, like, launch basic campaigns, do sort of basic mediocre creative, and I was just thinking, like, if Mark Zuckerberg is right, then I went through, like, a thought exercise as you were talking, like, "Okay, well, wait, why do I need to upload a product image? Like, why doesn't Meta go to a Chinese drop shipper and just find me a product? Why do I need a product? Just take my credit card." And you look puzzled, Shiv.
No, it's really I'm just thinking like, well, then everyone's a business, right?
Yeah,
And if everyone's a business, no one's a business.
right. Well, so that's kind of gets me to my next stage is I'm like, well, wait, why is Meta even asking for my credit card? Why doesn't Meta just run everything and capture all of this profit? Why even have the advertisers in the loop? If your algorithm is so effective at getting people to buy things, why have the advertisers? They become, frankly, kind of unnecessary in a world where, for instance, a lot of consumer goods are imported anyways, like they're just kind of white labeled stuff. You know, supply chains are getting like very, very compressed. So my point is not that I think Meta is like capable of this. It's just that that's yet another case of where you take these claims of kind of a perfect marketing engine to its logical ends, and you reach an absurd place where you're like, no, that's how could that possibly be that like one company with some perfect algorithm essentially takes over the entire global consumer economy because their algorithm is literally unbeatable and so efficient that it requires literally zero actual participation from outside of Meta because it's so good.
Yeah, so I think that I mean, this is why you're on the podcast, Miles. You think in crazy ways that I can't think of and conceive. So you know what's really interesting about that train of thought? And this applies to a lot of things, is like if you take things to their logical end, like you just did, even knowing that that's not actually probably going to happen,
Yeah.
it's interesting to then think about, okay, the extreme endpoint of this, what then are the differentiators that companies have to come in and disintermediate Meta to say, well, you can't do that because we still do this.
Right.
And then building your business
Yes.
based on those characteristics of the logical extreme, right?
Yeah, it's if you tip over all those logical dominoes, and if you as a business owner, an agency, an advertiser, another tech vendor can find a domino or set of dominoes that you're like, he's not going to tip those over. Those aren't going to work. That's where I'm going to build my business. Because as you showed the headline of the confessions of a media executive and Mark Zuckerberg's only commitment is to his shareholders. And I was thinking also, this is also tech hubris. We've now had what 25, 30 odd years of kind of just like this tech hubris that was brought on by the internet. Multiple tech executives have kind of like come and gone in the news cycle over the years of just being very, very kind of arrogant with their claims. And this strikes me as an arrogant claim. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is like I think he'll achieve a lot of it. I think the end goal of it is maybe a bit arrogant and a bit unrealistic. But of course, Mark Zuckerberg would look down on agencies because agencies are services businesses. He's a software guy. So if all software people look down on services people, it's just like a classic industry thing. If software people are like, why do you people all do all this stuff by hand? Why do you have to hire employees to do all this work? Like this is such an awful way to run a business. And what tech people don't understand, it's like, no, it's not really better or worse. It's just a different business. But then it invites the question back to what you were saying. It's like, well, what is it that humans do and agencies do that software just can't achieve? And that's, agencies are struggling with that. Struggling is not the right word, but they're confronted with the question right now of like, amid these very, very outlandish claims from the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world that all of marketing is going to be automated away, you then have to like find your like little logical cracks in that to justify your business. I think those justifications do exist. It's just it's hard right now because he's making out there making these like crazy claims that are frankly hard to refute.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. I also think it's good. I think it's positive, right? Because it
Yeah.
forces people um, into corners where they have to innovate and they have to think more deeply about the value that they create when maybe the value that they are creating today becomes automated and it should probably be automated, right? So I think it's a valuable exercise for everybody. I know it's a painful exercise for a lot of people and companies and jobs get lost and like that's no fun.
To me, we have to think about it all the time.
You think about it all the time. Like AI is training, education, and training. And we're thinking about that every day, right? Let's go to the so what section. So what do we think this all means? So I'm gonna spit out like the very basic stuff, Miles, that I came up with. So number one for agencies, we just talked about this. They obviously need to think about how to create value in this new world. We're already seeing WPP do it with the first ever LMM, right? And
LNM.
That's like a tongue twister. And Open Intelligence, MIQ putting out Sigma. Um, I think that's a better path forward than panic and confessions of an agency executive. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care about me or my business. So I think agencies are going to have to evolve faster than they ever have right now in this moment. For tech companies, I think, listen, you better be building this kind of stuff. You better be looking at what he's saying and copying that playbook or thinking about how you bolt on to what he's building as a complementary thing that maybe he can't create, right? Like you better be doing it. You better not be running the other
and
direction.
and your press release better say trillions now.
Wait, what's the one after trillions though?
Oh, quadrillion. Yeah. And
Quadrillion.
yeah, if your PR firm isn't on a roadmap to getting you to quadrillion, you got a problem.
Fire,
Yeah.
fire there. You're fired. Okay. And last but not least, most importantly, for buyers, for marketers, for agencies, for people on the buy side, again, I think this is great. I think this is great. It should theoretically make your life better. It should make your buying more efficient. It should drive better outcomes. But be careful, right? Like be careful of all of the things that we talked about, the potential pitfalls, the homogenization of your marketing. Even if it's, more tailored, it's more efficient, it's better planned, the creative looks better, it's targeted better, the analytics make more sense and are more real time. All of those things can be true, but as the entire world moves towards better versions of all of this, does anything actually or does any singular marketing campaign actually get better, right? As part of just this big pool of things improving? Maybe not, right? So as a marketer, you need to be thinking about your nooks and crannies, right? Of like where you create differentiation and Meta doesn't disintermediate you, right? And so Miles, I think you articulated kind of that crazy end state really well. Kind of go backwards from there. How do you still create differentiation in that world? Cool. Anything to add there to the so what's, Miles?
I mean, I just I saw this week as being I mean, there will be other weeks like this, but it was a week of very sort of it was apparent that there is like an AI and data land grab going on in the industry. Like when MIQ like very specifically calls out 700 trillion data points that I am assuming most of which were third party sourced. Maybe I'm wrong on that. That's my assumption is that this stuff is still sourced from data providers. Um, um, and then Salesforce announces this acquisition of Informatica, which my assumption with what's going on there is that I mean, this is just one way to characterize it, is that like Salesforce can look at the data that's in Salesforce. Because Salesforce Mark, what's Mark Benioff? Sorry, I don't want to mix up my marks. Uh, Mark Benioff has been really, really vocal about AI for the last year or so. Agent Force is their thing. And, if I were a betting man, I would bet that they are clients are applying agent force technology to their data, to their CRM data and their marketing data, and finding out it's an absolute dumpster fire. And they're finding it hard to train an AI model on this dumpster fire data. So then Salesforce is like, oh, well, we need to acquire Informatica, which can apply more of a governance layer on this data and make sure that it's all standardized and apples to apples and blah, blah, blah. And so even that is just kind of like this $8 billion like land grab thing of like, all right, well, we realize now the data needs to be standardized. And so we're going to like gobble up this $8 billion, like relatively old company. Informatica has been around a long time. And so, yeah, it was just seemingly like a significant week in terms of like, not just kind of like feature announcements, but these more land grab moves.
Yeah, and I think, what I saw, I don't understand those businesses super well, but what I gleaned from, like, those acquisitions was a lot of those, companies are, like, actual source data, like, living in, a database product, and basically, like, Salesforce and, these other companies wanna put their AI tools on top of it, right? So, everyone, like, talks about moats in the era of AI. Well, if the tech itself is a commodity, right? And the LLMs are a commodity. What's the actual value? What's the actual moat? Well, it's the underlying source data, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the land grab to your point, Miles, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in Salesforce's case, the underlying sort of moat, at least, is expressed to their customers is like, you have a treasure trove of insight in your own sales data. Like, that is the thing we need to help you unlock, that Agent Force needs to help you unlock. Otherwise, we have failed as a company. Like, we won't deliver on our mission over the next like 5 years if Agent Force isn't like delivering insights to you, sales pipeline insights, customer insights, blah, 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 blah.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks, Miles. That is a wrap for this week's You of Digital Live podcast, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.